If you only do it for a certain amount of time, like this tour, 1 month is plenty of time. And because it's okay if you're with people you enjoy being with. Even though she sang like an angel, there was sadness and quiet behind the sweetness. Karen Carpenter had scars that were too deep for applause to heal and too private for the spotlight. Now 5 names come to light through hints and bits and pieces of her truth, not because they were competitors, but because they hurt her. Her! For the times they made her feel like she wasn't seen, laughed at, or worthy, there were no fights. These were quiet tragedies that were etched into a voice that hurt all the time. Don Henley was the first person to break her peace. It was in the fancy but dangerous social circles of Los Angeles that Karen met Henley. People practiced smiles and put their egos before their names. Henley was everything cold and mean to her in that world. Stupid, cocky, and not interested in anything soft. He missed the beauty and weakness. He saw weakness. One night, while drinking champagne and chatting with big names in his field, he said something mean. It was said that he made a joke about the Carpenters' success being due to hormones from housewives, which hit them hard. Karen laughed softly to hide how much it hurt, but the pain was real and terrible, and she left early that night with tears in her eyes because she wasn't sure if her music was good or if she was worth anything. From then on, people never said his name with love again, because that moment hurt Karen in more ways than one. It confirmed her worst fear, that some people would always look down on her soft voice and songs, no matter how honest they were. They would see her heart not as art, but as a flaw. What was even worse was how cold and precise Frank Zappa was. He smiled instead of yelling or insulting. Zappa's disdain wasn't shouted, but came out as sharp sarcasm that made Karen feel small in the eyes of the field. She wanted to be a part of so badly. He made fun of her clean-cut look and soft sounds, as if being honest and open were bad for music. He never said her name in a mean way, but he also never said it with respect. Karen felt worse after that quiet jab than after a direct blow. When someone was mean, it hurt their soul more than their skin. Every note was filled with her pain, but Zappa turned it into a joke. His brand of cool was very different from everything Karen was. The difference between warmth, feeling, and purity hurt more than any hate ever could. It got rid of her. Then there was the deception, which really hurt her. David Wilson. It looked like a love story made out of stardust from the outside. Dennis is wild and attractive, while Karen is soft and looking. They were opposites that made sense until they didn't. Their relationship was weak and emotional at its core, but Dennis's storms always tore them apart. He was friendly one day and hard to reach the next. He played with chaos like it was a game, and he pulled Karen into it without notice or an app. She loved his broken beauty. His lack of consistency made me feel like I was on the edge of something real, but real became careless. He worked on the new record continuously for 8.5 years before taking a break. For the past 1.5 years, we've been working on it full time. It was his drug use, his sudden silences, and the carelessly with which he withdrew love that hurt her. It was a broken heart covered in slow-motion confusion. Even though it broke her, she held on to hope and tried to fix him and make him feel better. When he mentally disappeared, lost in his own ghosts and addictions, Karen was left staring at a void that screamed louder than any fight. She felt thrown away and forgotten, like her deepest love wasn't strong enough to hold someone steady. It wasn't just losing a loved one. It was the breaking down of faith. Another door shut. There was another voice in her head telling her she wasn't good enough, that her kindness always led to being left alone. And in that pain, Dennis's name turned into something she could not say without shaking. The next hurt came from someone she used to look up to. John Wicked. John Wicked. During the peak of the punk movement, Karen's smooth vocals and soft tunes were very different from Rotten's loud and angry music. She was everything that punks tried to destroy in his eyes. Order, weakness, and skill. But he didn't just say bad things about her art. He went to war with her soul. She was made fun of in interviews because he said her voice was fake and her music was empty and had no meaning. He told her she sounded like a lie. Karen was crushed. She had built her career on being honest and telling the truth about how she felt. These were more than words. They were taking apart who she was. Every insult was louder than any cheer she'd ever gotten. She thought that being honest was a sign of strength, and that a shaking voice could be stronger than the biggest scream. Rotten, on the other hand, turned her earnestness into weakness and her music into a joke. It was like seeing all the things she loved about music, the sensitivity and closeness, step on by boots and spit. While Rotten roared on stage and tore through the business like a wild animal freed, Karen sat alone in the dark studio and poured her heart and soul into weak harmony. She didn't dress up as rebelliousness. Her revolt was quiet and inside of her, and it was made up of tears that she never shed in public. Now, someone who had never known the pain of gentle sadness was making fun of her like she didn't exist. Not because it was loud, but because it was precise. The evil cut deep. It told her she wasn't good enough for music in this new world, that telling the truth didn't matter, that being quiet in a noisy world meant you were quick to throw away. That realization didn't just hurt Karen. It kept coming back to haunt her. It changed the way she heard her own songs, and the quiet made her feel even worse than before. Finally, the wound that was still there cut into her faith. It's Elvis Costello. As early as the late 1970s, Karen had to deal with shadows that stuck to her like smoke. Her weak health, the harsh lens of the media, and the constant battle with her image. Every day was hard in a quiet way. It seemed like an angel spoke through her, but it was also her tool and her shield. Then Elvis came along. In a single interview, he was mean and grinning. He thought the music she and Richard were making was stupid and sweet. Some thought it was just a jab. Karen, on the other hand, didn't care about genre or style. It was about value. It was about being laughed at after putting so much into every note, line, and rhythm. She had sung through pain, written through being alone, and acted through being worn out. Her singing was a safe place for her. Finally, that refuge was made fun of in public by a man whose voice was important. Not only did he attack, he put her down. Erin didn't answer. She never fought back or made news with her arguments. That wasn't her. She took it all in. And while they were being quiet, the wound got worse. She took it to work, to the stage, and to bed at night. It came back to her in her shaky breathing and the doubt that started to creep into her voice, which had been steady before. She sang still. She sang all the time, but something changed about her. The light goes out. Costello's words hurt more than just people. They proved what she had been afraid of in secret. That being soft would never be enough for the world she worked so hard to fit in. That people with sharper mouths were just after her purity, her honesty, and her weakness. Her voice was beautiful to everyone else, but her heart was shaking. A tune that made her feel bad, and all the cheers in the world couldn't drown out the pain of being made fun of by someone who didn't want to like her, but was still mean to her anyway. Karen Carpenter never yelled or hit out. Her sadness didn't roar. It sang with soft lullabies and poignant chords. Her broken heart became a theme song for a whole generation. The cries in between the notes were heard, though. She fought a war by herself behind every soft word. It was a war against make fun of, the eraser, and the holes left by people who smiled at her once and then cut her to the bone. Afraid it wasn't a short-lived drama or a small slight. These were deep emotional wounds from voices that told her she didn't belong, that her purity was a sign of weakness, and that her openness was a target. It hurt her to trust people, believe in herself, and be herself with each name. Still, she sang in dark studios by herself and in front of crowds of people who cheered, but the cheers never touched her heart. She never said mean things. She never got back at him. She felt more silence than anger, though, because behind the curtain, while everyone praised her, she was falling apart, questioning herself and hurting. She didn't hate very often, but when she did, it came from a place no one dared to look. Not anger, but sadness. A sadness that was so deep that it could be heard under every note. Some cuts don't cry out. Like her voice, some cuts stay with you in the dark, and they don't fade. They will never stop.